Hey guys, to help run the forums, host the website, and travel, we've introduced a universal service fee for in-depth coverage, including this video. My goal is to be unbiased and transparent. It's a privilege to serve you. This is not an endorsement. Let's get into it. We are in downtown Long Beach, California. I'm hanging out with Chris Nolte from Propel. He's moved his shop out here. Actually, you've expanded.
Yeah.
You've still got Brooklyn.
We do. Yeah. So I'm out here setting up a second shop. Pretty excited about that.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah.
This has been a real exciting visit because we just got back from Interbike and we've got some of the brand new 2019 Riese Müller models.
That's right. Yeah, very excited to have these bikes.
I have to admit, when I first saw them, I was just like, hey, Riese Müller, like, what's different? You know, this one over here, this is a new delight, and it's got the external like power pack batteries, but 2 of them. That's awesome. This one has the electronically shifted, internally geared Rohloff. Really cool. We might touch on that in a minute because I think it's an option for this one. This is the Homage GT Touring HS. So GT stands for like Grand Touring. It's about going a little bit further and sort of having some comfort along the way.
Right. So yeah, the Gran Turismo, which is I guess a race which was raced kind of in this really extended period, but you need a little bit more comfort for that sort of thing, and that's really what these bikes are set up to do. The wider tires and everything like that.
As you see it spec'd out, it's actually $7,800 in that neighborhood, but they do sell one without the second battery pack, because this actually has 2 batteries. You might have noticed, but it has a power pack, just like the Delight has too, and a power tube. So there's another battery inside there. You're getting nearly a kilowatt hour of capacity. That means you can go a lot further back to the Grand Touring, and then touring is also in the name. So this thing is really about going the distance comfortably and safely. The tires here are the Schwalbe Supermoto X, 27.5 diameter by 2.4 width. So they're not quite plus size, but they're definitely thicker, and that gives you some stability and definitely some comfort. I love that they have reflective sidewall stripes, especially because this frame color is deep sea metallic blue, and it might look kind of black to you on screen here because it's bright, high contrast, but it's definitely blue and it's beautiful. I really love this color because everything else on the bike is kind of blacked out. SR Suntour Ion air suspension with compression and rebound adjust. It's air along with the rear suspension back here. So, you know, the comfort is a big deal on this bike. I've been driving around with Chris, and I say driving, I mean riding, but it kind of feels like a car experience. You're paying more money for something like this, but it's comfortable, it's approachable because it's got this like step-through wave design, elevated a little bit because of the battery pack here, but again, that's an option. That just takes you a little bit further. You could take that off and still enjoy your ride. And I love that the way Bosch has set this up, they have a single charging port and it'll charge both batteries, and that will show up on the optional Kiox display. This was really exciting to me, and I'm going to get into that a little bit later. It's a step up definitely from the Intuvia, which is my favorite display panel kind of from prior years. Now I'm liking the Kiox, and I do want to be upfront with you guys. We have a sample unit here, so some of the menus are a little bit off limits, and there's some extra readouts and stuff, but it's been working great. Riding this thing around town has been awesome. I want to call out the Ergon GP1 grips. I want to call out the Cellar Royale gel saddle look in, very comfortable. And again, just the fact that everything on this bike is suspended. Because it's a full suspension bike, even this rack design is suspended. So if you have like a child seat on here, or maybe your laptop or something, we've got these pannier blockers, so they're not going to rub on the tire, the spokes and everything, and they're not going to get bounced around as much. It really does feel more like an automobile or a motorcycle, like a nice BMW. You know, there's more weight with those, which, hey, this bike does weigh more. I think it's like 73.6 pounds with the 2 batteries.
Yeah, with the 2 batteries.
We weighed it with the 2 batteries.
Else,
but on that point, this is 5.7 pounds. So you could subtract that from the weight if you wanted to. The power tube is a little bit heavier. They're like 6.3 pounds. So there's a half a pound difference, and that's been one of my complaints or question marks with Bosch. It's like, oh, it looks nice. It's built into the frame, but every company has a little bit of a different shield. This one's alloy, and that's actually what the secondary battery mounts to. But it does weigh a little bit more, so it looks nice. It lowers the weight. All the weight on this bike is low and center. I wanted to see those batteries up close, like get a feel for the double battery situation going on, Chris.
Let's do it. So yeah, this has a standard power pack and then a power tube inside. So The power pack is optional, but basically they're all key-to-like. So you pull the power pack off, and that's required in order to actually remove the power tube. And so basically you have this little knob here, kind of open this up so you can see inside. Now it's still locked in place, so you still have security on the power tube battery.
Okay, so it has that two-step thing, like that little black.
That's right. Yeah, it's more useful when the battery is kind of sitting aimed down, so you don't drop it. But it does have that extra latch on it.
And this is what we were talking about before, where this is like 6.3 pounds versus 5.7. You know, there are at least one Riese Müller model that has two power tubes.
That's the supercharger.
Oh, yeah. That's the supercharger. Yeah, that's
right.
What I was checking out in the UK, and it was like pretty intense, but they had to put it in that top tube and then one in the down tube. So I like that this one gives you that nice, clean, easy sort of step-through design. I really like that. And then this is just, you know, a naked battery. It's going to be a little bit easier to replace. There's no proprietary stuff, and it's still got that little LED indicator, so we can hand that back. Chris, is this one of the situations where if you know you want two batteries, you have to order them like at the time of purchase, or can you always upgrade later?
That's right. Yeah, for this you would have to do it at the time of purchase, because you do need this additional hardware, where in the case with the Delight always comes with the hardware. However, in the past it was an option to order it with two or one batteries. Now you can only order it with two batteries. Basically they found that there were so few people actually ordering it with a single battery. It's just kind of keep it simple. Pop this back in. So you want to have that latch facing up here, and just stick the bottom in first.
Looks like there are the wires and stuff are in here, so it's like you do have access. If you're a shop, a lot of the cables are internally routed. They look really nice.
Yep,
they're a little bit more accessible.
Pull that up there.
Cool.
And so that's locked in place. And then we're gonna.
There we go. You got it.
And you hear that audible click. That's really important, because if you don't hear that, it's actually not locked in place, and it could fall off the bike, which you don't want that.
It'd be an expensive mistake. I really like the Bosch drive systems here. We have a performance line speed, but the mounting, you know, kind of the interface that Riese Müller has gone with is just sort of the traditional oval plastic, versus I'm seeing some bikes where the motor's tipped up a little bit more and integrated into the frame, and maybe they couldn't do that here because there's so much going on. We have that suspension, we have that extra strong reinforced down tube. They don't want this bike to be flexy because there is a lot of weight and you might be going faster. Remember, this is a speed model, so up to 28 miles per hour, up to 63 Newton meters of torque. It's rated 350 to 575 watts of output, and this thing measures your rear wheel speed, pedal cadence, and pedal torque over 1,000 times per second. It's a phenomenal motor. You might notice that it has this tiny little chain ring. It's not a traditional chain ring. You've heard me say this before if you've seen my other reviews. This spins at 2.5 revolutions for every single crank revolution. Okay, so it's a reduction gear, and it does have this nice derailleur. It's kind of like a guard so that your pants won't touch the chain, it won't bounce off as easily, but it spins a little bit faster, and in so doing, maybe there's a little bit more noise. It's fast, it's responsive, it has good chain grab, but there's a little bit of drag if you're pedaling this unassisted, which, you know, takes some effort because of the weight. The tires are efficient, they're a little bit more smooth here, they're not knobby. The rims, very nice, 35 millimeter inner diameter, so they're a little bit wider. Reinforcement nipples, black spokes. So I was talking about black before with these nice extra wide SKS plastic fenders. Come up here and we've got that custom stem that's black, the handlebars, everything, maybe even the grip. So Ergon does have a black on black option. I'm not seeing it here. And then the lighting. So safety, we talked about those reflective sidewalls. This is the M99 Mini, and this thing is super bright, and I love that they've mounted it here just above the crown on the suspension fork instead of on the lowers where it bounce up and down. So a little bit higher, it's gonna keep you seen. Super bright on this thing. It even has a bright mode. There's like a button up here so you can turn it from on to bright. And the default is that these lights are on anytime the bike is on, because that's a European standard, right? You turn the bike on, both Supernova lights turn on. Whenever you pull the brake levers, the rear light goes bright, which is really cool. I want to hit on a few more things because I'm excited to sort of break it down with Chris in a minute here. This is 11-speed Shimano Dior XT. Dynasis 11, Shadow Plus, so Shadow meaning that the derailleur's tucked in a little bit and moved back, so it's not going to bump curbs and stuff if you're passing by, and it has the one-way clutch. That's what the plus means from Shadow Plus. And if you put it in the up position, it tightens the spring a little bit, so you might not have as much chain bounce. And that's nice, again, on a speed pedelec. If you do have chain bounce, there's a nice slap guard built in. This rack up here, I think it's rack time compatible. It's got this cool Bibia adjustable rubber strap that it comes with, and it's got this awesome Abus Bordeaux alarm lock. And we might tinker with this a little bit later, but when you unlock it, and it is key to the battery and everything, and then you lock it again, it goes like beep, beep. We did this the other night, went out for some food, locked the bike up, and it's just armed.
Yeah.
I mean, that's sweet, especially given some of the higher price on these bikes, depending on which options you go with. So I'm going to keep going because there's just so much to talk about. A little bit thicker on this seat post right here. You could upgrade that to maybe a suspension post. You hear me say that a lot of times on hardtails, but on this bike you really don't need to. It is super, super comfortable with that full suspension. I love it. The pedals, this is an area where it's meh, they work. You know, they've got this rubber tread on them. They're not quite as big as some of the Welgos I call out, like the BMX pedals, but if you slip off, you're not going to cut yourself on this. So it just depends on your shoe size, maybe your foot size. This bike does come in 3 frame sizes, which is really nice. I happen to be on the large right now, and it's working fine. It's able to lower the seat a little bit for myself, and then I like the kickstand position. It's out of the way, so you can pedal backwards, and it's not going to get bumped. 180 millimeter hydraulic disc brakes from Magura. Awesome levers. These are the e-bike specific ones, so there's a little click. See how that first part of the lever, and then there's the second part where it actually goes. So when you pull those, again, it activates the brake lights back there, and just you've got plenty of stopping power, and you want that. That's really important, especially if it's rainy or you're going faster and you're using this more like a vehicle. Tapered head tube, by the way, on this, so if you did for some reason want to upgrade the suspension later, this is a little speaker for the horn, which we're going to show you in a little bit too. And then we've got through axle, so 15 millimeter through axle up front with quick release, and then back here 12 millimeter with quick release, 100 millimeter hub spacing, 135, all traditional, not plus size, but again 2.4 inch wide tires. I feel like that's a good overview. There's a lot to talk about, and I've listed all the specs back at ElectricBikeReview.com, like I do, and I'll link to that in the description. But I might move this into the shade a little bit here. Chris can just follow along with the delight, and that way hopefully you can see this a little bit better. It does look pretty nice regardless of the lighting conditions. Okay, so I'm just gonna tap the power button there, and you can see that this thing is color. So we've got gray. This is off mode, so this is like if you're just powering under human power. We've got clock up at the top left, the level of assist, which you can see it says off. Lights, so they're automatically on because it's a speed pedelec, but then there's that light button here, so I press that. I just want to show you how cool this is here. It goes from bright mode to less bright. Very, very nice. Definitely something you want to have if you're in a big city. Battery percentage, awesome job. I love that there's an infographic and a percentage with 1% increments. So we're at 94% right now. We're in kilometers per hour. You can switch it to miles per hour if you want. Current speed down here. And then do you see all these little dots? Each one of those is a different sort of menu layout, and you click the right and left arrows to go through them. So if we first go to the left, we can see battery 1 and battery 2, and that is so cool because it gives you some idea of how each battery is doing. And you'll notice they're both at 94% because Bosch tries to balance the 2 batteries rather than running one down and then the next one, and that's going to prolong the life of both packs. So one's not just getting cycled all the time, and the other one's just sitting there at full. And then down here we have settings. So you can press the select button over here and go through some of those settings. If we go to the right, and then right after the main menu, we have clock, we have range. So this is really cool. It gives you an estimate as you arrow up or down through the different levels of assist. So if I go back to the main display, we're at gray. Let's take it up to eco, which is blue. Again, if let's say you're way back here, you can't read that, but you can see the color change pretty easily, right? That's what I think they're going for with colors. So anyway, we go to the right and we see range. 215 kilometers in eco mode, and that's based on the last mile or so of me riding. So it actually updates, and you can reset that to get kind of a new estimate. Like if you're going downhill a lot and you're like, I think I can go further, you can go and you reset that. I think that's really cool. There's our clock again. So a lot of these are sort of replicated throughout. Trip distance, trip time. We've got power in watts, RPM, so you can see how fast you're spinning. The Bosch Performance Line motors do support up to 120 RPM. So for someone like me, I have a background in kind of road cycling, and I like to spin faster because my knee's a little bit sensitive, and if I'm pushing and I'm doing the big, heavy strokes, I feel it. That's why I like electric bikes. So I'm glad that Bosch can support that, and I can still feel like I'm getting cardio by spinning quickly, and I can track that. If we go to the right again, we've got average speed, max speed, and then let's see, kind of a 4, like a quadrant where it's like distance, range, power, heart rate. This is a really cool one. And heart rate, beats per minute. That's really cool. The final display is just heart rate. So if you're someone who's trying to track your calories and, you know, maybe lose some weight and lower the assist level occasionally to get your heart rate up and then raise it if you hit a hill, this is so cool. It turns into like a workout machine. So this display does have Bluetooth integration, and Bosch has talked about some apps in the future that'll let you do who knows what. But it's exciting. I love that you could have a little, you know, bracelet or maybe a chest monitor. I got to see this at Bike. Jonathan Weinert sort of showed it off and did like a little like workout routine while we watched real time, and sure enough, it tracked. So one of the things that I love about this is how compact it is, that it uses Gorilla Glass, that it's magnetic, so you can just pop this thing off and take it with you, or there's a little set screw so you can kind of mount it more permanently, and you'll see that it went kind of in like a little dimmer mode here. This does adjust dynamically depending on how bright it is outside, so I think that's another really cool thing. You know, color, backlit, compact, tough. They were talking about how the mountain bike models, if you crash, the display can like kind of pop off instead of breaking the mount. You know, and you can see how much bigger this one is. The Intuvia, it's larger, it's raised up higher because it's not integrated into the stem. I still really like this display, and it might use a little less power because it's like just kind of a light white backlighting, and it's grayscale versus color. It has a USB port there, micro USB, and so does this one. So let's do I'm gonna just hit the power and it says goodbye. Just pop it off, just that easy, and there's a little micro USB port in the bottom. So you might be like, well, how can I use that with this stem? Glad you asked. There's this really cool little pop-up thing, so you can actually run your cables right through, and then, you know, maybe put your phone on your handlebars for GPS. Maybe in the future they'll have a GPS like readout here or something. All kinds of possibilities. But the display pad itself just has fewer buttons. It's just power and lights, versus before we had reset, power, information, and lights. So they've kind of minimized it, and then they've added a button here to the control pad. So there's walk mode, plus, minus, left, right, and select. That's what we've got going on there, versus the older one, it was like walk, plus, minus, and I. So it's definitely, it's richer, but you know, they've spent their time to try to get this thing right, and then to empower different brands, like in this case Riese Müller, to integrate the display beautifully. One thing I do not love about this display, however, is that depending on where you are in that menu system, remember there were all those dots, you can arrow right, but you can't arrow around. It doesn't let you like cycle back to the front. You have to literally press left. So it's like, maybe someday they'll do a software update. That was one of the call outs at the show. They were like, yeah, you know, over the air updates if you kind of connect your smartphone to this. We're still early days. There's still some exploring I want to do, but that's as in-depth as I can get right now. And I love that it interfaces with the lights. The lights on this bike run off of the batteries. You don't have to have separate cells. You don't have to press on and off and forget about them or something. They're integrated. And the same thing with this horn. That's a really cool feature too, which we'll show when we're out doing a little ride. You know, to kind of be fair here, I want to call out some of the pros and cons about these bikes, okay? As I see them, Chris, and feel free to chime in. Sure. You know, we just talked about sort of the menu system, how you have to go up and down, you can't circle around. They're expensive, definitely. They're heavy, 73.6 pounds with the 2 batteries. It's on the heavier side, and we talked about why that's the case. I didn't see bottle cage bosses. Bosch, I got Bosch on the brain. I didn't see bottle cage bosses here, but there's this like folding lock mount. Yes, you have the lock mount, and actually underneath here, there's actually 2 bolts, which you could, in theory, there's some different types of water bottles that you might be able to mount there. Yeah, and there's like the Z cages and stuff where you can kind of come from the side. So that is nice. In the past, I've said like, man, you can get little saddle rail adapters and stuff. You gotta be careful with those ones though, because the bottles, you hit a big bump and it can shoot out like a rocket, you know. I gotta ride in the front if you got those, or maybe the back, so you save your friends. Yeah, the motor, how it has the reduction gear, how it's like there's a little more noise. This is a heavier motor, 8.8 pounds, but Bosch is pretty reliable. Sure. You and I have talked about this before, and like Chris, you pretty much you're almost exclusively Bosch, and I've asked why, and you've said,
yeah, I mean, just reliability, the support that we get from them. It's just there's not too much that compares out there in our experience. You know, other motor systems are good, and but there's a lot of shortcomings, and sometimes we're not really willing to kind of deal with that, especially if it's going to impact the customer experience, which is really important.
If you want this thing to be like a car, you need it to be reliable, right? So they picked, and that's Riese Müller. They're exclusive Bosch too. They've been working with them since the beginning, and they have a sizable R&D department, and believe me, they're looking at other stuff out there, but you know, and before they were with Bosch, they were with some other companies, but they still continue to do exclusively Bosch. That means a lot. And Bosch is one of the only mid-drive systems that I know of, besides maybe some aftermarket Bafang stuff, that offer shift detection.
Right, yeah, the only ones that offer it in this sort of way, that's actually sensing based on the amount of torque applied, and it's not like an aftermarket switch or something like that.
That's right, it's not a physical, it's like a software thing. And Bosch, you know, they make sensors in like iPhones and self-driving cars and stuff.
Yeah.
They're a leader. I'm trying to think, what other cons here? Like, we had like a little list, because I'm trying to do you guys justice and be clear about the trade-offs here, trying to make this a review. The truth is, it's just a really deep like overview, and we are going to ride, but what else comes to mind, Chris?
I mean, one of the other things we talked about is that the stem, because it is somewhat of a proprietary stem, this stem is made by a company called Ergotech, and at the moment they just make this one model and one angle. So if you wanted to do, maybe change your position or something like that, you would be somewhat limited to maybe doing different handlebars, or if you wanted to do a different stem, you'd kind of lose this level of integration. I think that the ride position and the way that they design the geometry is really great from the factory, and it's one thing that they take into consideration more than most brands I've ever experienced. But that being said, sometimes people still want a different position. It is possible, but maybe it's just a little bit some additional steps in comparison to something where you just have the Intuvia and you can kind of pop it off and use any stem, really.
And there is an external Kiox mount, and that's an option. You can get the Intuvia. That's part of why I'm trying to show both bikes here.
That's absolutely right.
Right. So I really like Kiox, and I love how that looks and everything. And it's got everything. I mean, there's nothing missing on that display. Everything, literally everything I called out about the Intuvia, this has. It's a little bit smaller, but the color makes it really easy to read and interpret. Anything else come to mind here?
Well, I think the other thing probably important to talk about is maybe the options. I'm not sure if you want to talk about them now or...
Oh, yeah, that's a great point. So this bike does come in those 3 sizes we talked about. It comes with the optional battery and display upgrade, and we're on the touring model, so it has the cassette 11 to 46 teeth, so that's a pretty wide range. And this is a 20-tooth chainring up here, so it's geared a little bit more towards speed in this configuration, but they do have an homage that's a non-speed pedelec, right? Just like Class 1.
Yeah, so they basically have 3 different drivetrain options and 2 motor systems for each of those drivetrain options. So you have this one, which is the touring. It has a derailleur. This is the HS or high-speed model.
Yeah.
And you have it available as a non-HS, which comes standard with the CX motor with 75 newton meters of torque in comparison to the 63.
It's like their mountain bike motor.
But the other drivetrain options are what was called NuVinci is now called Vario. So the company actually changed their name, and they also changed the name of the model of the hub. So now they have the Vario hub, which is very similar to the previous generation, but the new version is designed to handle more torque. I imagine we'll talk about that on some of the other models.
Yeah. Well, that's good, because they had a ton of these going into e-bikes.
Absolutely.
And they need to handle the 75 newton meters.
It's one of the few internally geared hubs that is capable of handling the amount of torque that the motors actually produce.
And wait, is it an internally geared hub, or is it a continuously variable transmission?
Yes.
Which can be shifted just dynamically. It's like unlimited gear, the range is still, I don't know, is that the N380 kind
of 380%. And then if you want that really wide range of gears, you can opt for the Rohloff hub like you have on this Delight, and the hub is effectively the same as the way it is on this hub on the Delight. Now this is the Rohloff with the E14, so this is the new version available for Riese Müller, and they pretty much spec'd it on all the bikes that they previously had Rohloff they're running the E14 instead of the standard mechanical shifter. The great thing about the E14 is that the shifting actually communicates with the motor. And so talking about that shift sensing and the shift detection is actually dependent on the motor sensing a difference in the amount of torque applied to the chain or the belt in this case. But the challenge with the internal hub or continually variable transmission, however you want to describe it, is you can't actually get that detection. So
yeah, that's true. I've just noticed I'm like trying to shift the NuVinci or the Vario, and it's like hard. So I have to like kind of ease off, and then you're missing out on all the detection.
That's right.
So since this one is stepped, and since it's electronically integrated, I mean, that's huge.
In my experience, nothing is as seamless as the E14, but you are paying a pretty price tag for that, as this is kind of the highest spec version out there.
Yeah.
But if you ride it, you can run through the gears really seamlessly, very quick. You don't really have that lag as you're shifting. And if you get comfortable with it, you can actually find that right shift point when you're kind of in the top of your pedal stroke, where you're actually not getting too much power, and allowing it to shift at that point. Because it can shift so quickly, you can just keep your seamless pedaling, and it's really quite nice. And and then there's some other details on the E14 which are really cool. When you stop, it automatically shifts down
to like a starting gear.
Exactly,
because it can shift at standstill.
That's right.
Like all the and also the Vario could do that too.
Yeah, so this is really, you know, and as you were talking about before, like things kind of getting more like an automobile and that sort of stuff, like this is a serious transmission. I mean, you know, these other types are really great, and maybe, you know, the derailleur's a little bit lighter, a little bit of a different experience, you know, a little bit sportier, different.
It's crisp, right? Like it shift through.
It is, and you know, a lot of people prefer that, so it's really a personal preference.
But it's messier, right? It's probably not as reliable as this belt drive over here. Do they only spec the Rohloff with belts, or are they doing that with chains too?
So that's another big upgrade for the Homage specifically, is that for this new model update, they're doing the belt with the Vario as well as the Rohloff. Now they do have a model that they still spec with the Rohloff and the chain, which is the Delight Mountain or the Delight Mountain Extreme now.
Wow.
But aside from that, they're doing belts on pretty much all the internal hub.
Which brings us back to our final con. Can you guess what it is?
I don't know.
Wait time. There is a little bit of, because you can customize this so much, which is awesome, because you have so many choices and the sizes, and I mean, it's awesome. You pay a little more for that. You wait for it, and I think because we're here in the United States right now, and this is a German company,
right,
and they ship it over. I mean, they touch these bikes, right? This is it's pretty hands-on.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, they're built in Germany, and yeah, it can take some time. Sometimes dealers will put some extra bikes in the pipeline, or
I know a dealer like that, right? That's what we're reviewing. These are demo models, you guys, but Chris usually does have some stock, which is neat, and that's part of the reason I visit him. And I'm sleeping in his guest room right now, so thank you for that. That makes this possible. I'm trying to be as transparent as possible with these reviews.
Sure.
But yeah, you might be waiting a month or a few months, depending on situation here. So that's something to consider. Do they run out of inventory, or do they just perpetually kind of like upgrade and little?
So it wouldn't be inventory per se, because they don't actually carry any inventory, but it could be individual parts. So sometimes maybe there's an individual part on the bike that runs out. There can be substitutions sometimes. They try to keep a similar spec or go up spec if possible. But yeah, these things can happen, and sometimes those things will cause delays, or if they say they get parts in and it doesn't meet their quality standards, because they check everything when they receive it. Yeah. They'll say, okay, we got to turn that back, and then you know, so these things happen. But they've been getting better and better at keeping on schedule. They're actually launching a new facility this January, which we're really excited about. So they've just growing so much every year that they've had to to build a new building in Germany to build the bikes.
Gee whiz. Didn't they just enter the United States like 2017 with the help of someone I know? Right? You and you're very connected, right? You went to Eurobike and you were like, hey, you guys have awesome stuff. I'd love to carry it.
I mean, yeah, that's basically the thing. You know, I've been going to Eurobike for years, and every year I go and you look around and we're always looking for the best bikes out there. The reality is, after, you know, a lot of talking and consideration, thankfully they came here, and I think they came at the right time. I mean, I think that people are looking for something of higher quality as people are using bikes more for transportation.
We're in a city where, I mean, parking here is crazy, guys. Southern California, the real estate's expensive. We're near the beach. So a lot of people take Uber or whatever, but a bike like this, you can bring it inside. You can squeeze through traffic. You can, I mean, it's a very empowering experience, I found. And, you know, I know I'm promoting Chris here a little bit, talking about how he forged this relationship, really, but you know, he's talking about how these are some of the best bikes. Riese Müller only works with some of the best dealers. So if you have a dealer that's near you, and I do have like a geo-located shop tool back at the website, I feel like they've vetted their dealers pretty well.
They want to make sure they work with the right dealers. The reality is that the bikes are complicated, and they require a lot of expertise to help people get on the right bike.
And they offer a 2-year comprehensive warranty, I think with like 5 years on the frame or something like that.
That's right.
Which is pretty good.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's awesome. We spent a little bit of extra time going over this and talking a little bit about Riese Müller. We'll probably talk about company history and stuff in other reviews. And we did an interview. Heiko came over from Germany, one of the founders. So there's that back at the YouTube channel. Want to hop on these?
Let's do it. Yeah,
let's do it, man.
Sure.
Okay, so I'm on the bike. I'm in eco mode, which is just the gentlest. It's going to get you the most range and help conserve that battery. And from this angle, I can actually see the display really well. Do you remember the terminology they used? It's not transflective, but...
Oh,
transmissive.
Yeah.
That was interesting. So they call this display transmissive because apparently you can read it from different angles, and it looks pretty good in broad daylight like we have here, as well as a little bit of shadows. And that is my experience. I'm not seeing a lot of glare, first of all, because the angle is good. This is not adjustable angle. It sort of depends on the stem situation or the mount. But the colors, and they're pretty vivid. And then do you see that little bar that sort of builds up and gets a little bit larger? Like, that's my pedal power, the blue one, and then the white one is the motor. So right now, you know, we kick it up a little bit and the white grows. But if I take the assist level all the way up to turbo, now look at that. Really, really neat, kind of dynamic feedback on this thing. It's fun to look at. And then the button pad, it's well within reach. The buttons click consistently, which is something that I struggled with a little bit on the Purion. They kind of pivoted in. Hey, Chris, you want to give me a little honk? Oh, there we go. He's honking at us, guys. That's what it sounds like if maybe you're passing some people on the street. Everything's just really reachable, and it's stable. I mentioned those tires before, right? So I feel like the bike's tracking really well. I feel like I can hop off this thing if I needed to stabilize, and I'm not gonna get hung up. Remember, this is the large frame. Still feels pretty good. You want to trade off with me, Chris? I'd love to get a third-person perspective. Just trade them off for the Delight. I like this one too. These are their full suspension models, and it's just super comfortable.
A small frame on there.
This one's a small? Okay, cool.
This frame's a little big on me, but it'll be all right.
Okay, here we go. I'm gonna hop on. This one has the knobby tires. There we go. Beautiful. It's such a cool place. Oh yeah, there we go. Thank you for that little suspension demo. There we go. Very nice. I can see that lighting up whenever he brakes, and that's really nice to have. A lot of times, some of the cheaper e-bikes that I look at, they've just got 1 or 2 LEDs in the back. You know, this one, it's got a metal housing, which is really nice. The LEDs go bright, and that headlight, I don't know, maybe can do the, there we go. This is pretty impressive for like middle of the day, bright afternoon. I mean, this bike's working pretty well. It's quiet, it's smooth. I'm liking it. I think I'm gonna toss the camera on and do some frame shots real quick. Okay guys, you are pointed at that 20-tooth chainring. These are 170mm cranks, by the way. And I am in turbo mode. I'm just gonna take off and shift through the gears and let you listen for that shift detection and the motor. Just get an idea for how this thing rides. Super smooth, super quiet, except when you're at higher RPM. You hear the motor kind of go when you're up to the 120. That's the case with many of these mid motors when you're spinning a little bit faster. I definitely noticed shift detection. We were able to hit 27, almost 28 pretty effectively there, and it didn't feel scary or unstable, which is a big deal on a kind of a wave step-through frame like this, especially with suspension, because there's this extra pivot points and stuff. So I'm impressed. I genuinely like this bike. It just feels more like a motorcycle or something I could ride and not have to worry about the elements or the conditions or what it's gonna feel like on my body. Okay guys, you're connected to the rear swing arm here. I'm gonna go over some bumps and just give you an idea of how that suspension performs. Amazing to me. You can just ride up those triple steps back there, and they're a little bit wider, maybe not as steep as some, but just smooth. I mean, no problem. And riding down, the fenders aren't rattling, it's quiet. It's a phenomenal experience. So I was really impressed. Just a minute ago I had the camera mounted to the frame, and I just thought, like, I'm gonna go up the stairs, which I've done with mountain bikes, and this handled it.
Oh yeah.
I was impressed. The bigger tires and everything. We found an area where not a lot of people. I'm just gonna do it third person here, and just to show you what that might look like. And Chris is gonna film. Good luck, buddy.
Let's do it.
You got it? That's pretty incredible. Just smooth, the fenders aren't like nice, unexpected, delighted. Well guys, I think that's about it. We've had a ton of fun out here. Chris, I appreciate you sharing your expertise.
Really a pleasure always, Court.
It's fun, right? And it's hard to remember all this stuff and know all the features and stuff. You're an expert at it. I trust you. But I get stuff wrong, and sometimes we do miss things, so please chime in with the comments or in the forums or whatever if you've got any feedback, or maybe you get this, you just want to say hey and sound off about how it's working for you. That's always welcome. Have fun out there, you guys. Ride safe. We'll see you next time.